I'm trying to find out what's living under the surface of this frozen river where I've read that North America's second largest salamander could be lurking. And I'm here to see if they actually bark like a dog like some people claim. Just a handful of salamanders around the world have this bizarre adaptation to make sounds on their own. And as soon as I read that one of these potentially noise-making salamanders could be found around me, I knew I had to try. So last winter, I spent several months trying to track down the elusive mudpuppy. I searched creeks and lakes, and for a few weeks I even set baited traps.
First one is empty.
All I ended up catching were a few fish and occasionally a crawdad.
And a very cold crayfish. There you go.
And after an entire year of endlessly looking and still no mudpuppy, it became clear that this search was going to be a lot harder than I thought. For the past year, my plan was to look from the shoreline, never getting too close to the water because this animal is most active during the wintertime, which is when the water is the coldest. If I were going to find a mudpuppy, I had to do something differently, so this time I was getting in the water. And pretty much just as expected, the water was extremely cold.
All right, so my plan is to flip the rocks here. Hopefully, if there's a mudpuppy under there, I'll scoop them up. Some clams. No mudpuppy.
Under one of the rocks, I uncovered something that looked like it came from another planet. This is a helgramite, an aquatic macroinvertebrate. They use those giant pincers to capture and eat other aquatic insects. But this is not how they'll spend their entire life, because this is just the larval stage of a Dobson fly. They're a good sign that this stream is a relatively clean ecosystem. Mudpuppies need the same environment. I kept on looking.
A really nice rock right here. So they really like to have an entrance on one side. You can see there's an entrance there upstream, and have an exit downstream, which is what I'm seeing exactly under this rock. So let's give it a flip and hope for the best here. Just kidding. I can't flip this rock. Yeah, I can't flip that rock.
Embarrassing, but I did flip other rocks, and that's how I found this fish. Here is a smallmouth bass, a sunfish species that is a popular target for fishermen. And as it turns out, I'm better at catching them under rocks than with a fishing pole. Just like with everything I catch, I put it right back where I found it.
Okay, I'm pretty stoked because of what I have in this container right there.
This is a salamander, but it isn't quite fully grown. Note the external gills and the tail fin. This is the larval stage in this salamander's life cycle. My best guess is that one day this will develop into a two-line salamander. It's way smaller than the mudpuppy I was trying to catch. However, I was one step closer to knowing what a mudpuppy sounded like because this is the closest thing I found to one in the past year. So up until this point, I've been trying to find a mudpuppy during the day, but the truth is mudpuppies are usually a nocturnal species. There are some exceptions to this. If the water is murky, the mudpuppies are more likely to be active during the day, but this water is that was very cold, extremely clear, so the chances of me finding a mudpuppy are actually kind of slim during the day. So I waited for the sun to set before continuing my search. 2 hours after dark, I head out with my net in one hand and container in the other. This had to be the night that I finally found a mudpuppy because I didn't want to wait any longer to find out the truth about their bark.
How dark it is out here. If I cut my flashlight, nothing but that car driving over there and that other car. But other than that, pretty dark out here.
This river came to life in the nighttime. Within 5 minutes of looking, I found this massive crayfish. These are a common source of food for mudpuppies, although I'm not sure if a mudpuppy would eat one this size. I'm about 85% sure that this is a rusty crayfish. I've misidentified crayfish plenty of times though. Rusty crayfish were originally found in the Ohio River Basin, but now they're introduced throughout the Midwest. I was also finding a bunch of fish that I wasn't able to see during the day. But just like the crawdad, I'm not that confident in my ID on this. I think it's a yellow perch, but I've never seen one this big.
I just caught this ginormous bass. It definitely has some weird infection type thing going on the side of its body right there. But giant bass, pretty cool. Okay, I'm not.
Of course, not all of the fish I was finding were huge. There were a ton of these sunfish everywhere, taking advantage of the small crevices under the rocks. After finding everything else and searching for roughly an hour, I saw something moving between the rocks. And I knew for a fact that this was not a fish. I went in with my net to get a closer look.
Let's go, I caught one. Okay. Let me get some water. I know it's hard to see, but I just got one.
This is a common mud puppy. They're North America's second largest salamander, sitting just behind the eastern hellbender. They look very similar to the larval salamander that I caught during the day, and that's because unlike other salamanders, this species will never absorb their external gills. They retain their larval features for life. In this sense, they're similar to the popular pet salamander, the axolotl. They're an important part of their ecosystem, not just because them being here means the water's relatively clean, but also because there's an entire mussel species that relies on their existence. Mud puppies are the only known host for the salamander mussel. The microscopic larval stage of the mussel attaches itself to the gills of this salamander. They grow and develop as parasites before falling off of the mud puppy's gills and onto the river floor. They're the only known freshwater mussel to use salamanders instead of fish as a host. But the question still remains, what does a mud puppy really sound like?
Hear any sounds coming out of it? All right, time for the moment of truth. Does the mud puppy bark like a dog? I'm gonna stick this camera in the container with the mud puppy and see if it makes any sounds. Let's hear.
Was that supposed to be the sound they make? The truth is, I have no idea. You see, I scoured the internet looking for a mud puppy making a barking sound or any other sound for that matter, and I could find nothing to compare the sound I recorded to. I even managed to catch another mud puppy for a second opportunity to hear the bark, but it stayed completely quiet. Some claim mud puppies are always silent, while others claim that they make more of a squeaking sound, which would make sense because of the sound that I just heard. However, just about everyone agrees that mud puppies definitely do not bark like a dog. It took me a whole year to finally find the salamander, and while it didn't end up barking like a dog, a bit disappointing, I'm still glad I finally got to see one. Most people will spend their entire lives without ever coming close to this secretive salamander. If you like this video, you will probably like another one. Go check it out and see for yourself.